Good morning. You're watching Breakfast with Sally Nugent and Dan Walker.
Our headlines for you today. What caused the coronavirus outbreak? A long-awaited report from the World Health Organization is published today as world leaders call for an international treaty to deal with future pandemics.
Lawyers set out their opening arguments on the first day of the trial of a police officer accused of the murder of George Floyd.
Good morning. Are we set for a bumper delivery for Deliveroo? Shares in the takeaway delivery firm are up for grabs for the first time, but some investors are spooked by a row over workers' rights. What does it tell us about future ways of working?
We don't want you to get sick.
We don't want you to die.
And when your turn comes, take the jab.
Dozens of high-profile stars join a campaign by Sir Lenny Henry urging people from black communities to get the COVID vaccine.
Good morning. One of the Premier League's greatest strikers, Sergio Aguero, Manchester City's record goal scorer, will leave the club at the end of the season, but wants to win more titles before he goes.
Hello, the pandemic has seen a huge increase in the number of people wanting to move to the countryside and to the coast. So we're in Cornwall to find out what's going on.
Good morning. Further heavy rain today across the north and west of Scotland and gusty winds as well. For the rest of us, variable amounts of cloud and some very warm sunshine across England and Wales. I'll have more details in about 10 minutes.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, the 30th of March. Our top story. COVID-19 is likely to have been passed to humans from bats through another animal. That's according to a long-awaited report from the World Health Organization into how the pandemic started.
The study, which has been seen by the BBC ahead of its publication this afternoon, also dismisses claims that the virus escaped from a laboratory in China as extremely unlikely. Aruna Iyengar has more.
The origins of the coronavirus.
This eagerly awaited report has faced setbacks and diplomatic wrangling. Experts from the WHO had trouble even getting into Wuhan, the city at the centre of the initial outbreak of Covid-19. Investigations finally started in January this year, more than a year after the first cases emerged. Key findings of the experts' report are that Covid-19 passed from bats through an intermediary animal to humans, but it doesn't offer definitive answers on the mystery at the very heart of the pandemic, how the virus first jumped to humans. And the theory that the virus was released via a laboratory incident in China is considered extremely unlikely.
Of course, I will have more to say following further review and understanding of the report, but for now all hypotheses will be on the table and will need further study.
Although the Wuhan food market was initially thought to be where the outbreak began, WHO and Chinese scientists found evidence that the virus could have been circulating for some weeks before December 2019, and some of those infected had no connection with the market. It comes as the Prime Minister Boris Johnson joins a group of more than 20 world leaders calling for a new international treaty to help the world deal with future pandemics. They say coronavirus has posed the biggest challenge to the global community since the 1940s, and countries must be better prepared in the future. The Covid-19 pandemic has killed almost 2.8 million people worldwide. It's hoped the report's findings will give some clearer answers on how the virus came about. Aruna Iyengar, BBC News.
Now, another pandemic or health crisis is a matter of not if, but when. That's the warning from a group of more than 20 world leaders. Boris Johnson, Emmanuel Macron and Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel are among those calling for a new international treaty to deal with future outbreaks and ensure universal and equal access to medicine and vaccines.
In the United States, witnesses have given powerful testimonies of the final moments of the life of George Floyd on the opening day of the trial of a former police officer accused of his murder.
Prosecutors showed the jury video footage of Derek Chauvin kneeling on Mr. Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes. He denies the charges against him. Our correspondent Lebu Diseko sent this report from Minneapolis.
Yes, I'll say I do. Thank you. You may be seated.
Derek Chauvin facing a jury of his peers. The central question for both sides in this case, what caused George Floyd's death?
We're going to ask that you find him guilty.
The prosecution says it was Chauvin kneeling on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
On May 25th of 2020, Mr. Derek Chauvin betrayed this badge when he used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd.
Counsel, Mr. Chauvin.
The defence argued that the officers were facing an increasingly hostile crowd, distracting them from Mr. Floyd's care. His death, they said, was the result of drug use and poor health.
The evidence will show that Mr. Floyd died of a cardiac arrhythmia that occurred as a result of hypertension, his coronary disease, the ingestion of methamphetamine and fentanyl, and the adrenaline flowing through his body, all of which acted to further compromise an already compromised heart.
Among the opening day's witnesses, a 911 dispatch worker who was watching the arrest via a police camera. She was so alarmed by what she saw that she rang the officer's supervisor.
This is the most high-profile police brutality case to be tried in the US for decades. Race isn't being mentioned in court, but its significance is inescapable. People across this country and the world are watching what happens here closely. Lebu Giseko, BBC News, Minneapolis.
Well, Lebu joins us now from outside the courtroom in Minneapolis. Take us through the events so far then.
Well, we heard the defence and the prosecution set out their cases in the opening statements, and with the three witnesses that we saw take the witness stand yesterday. The continuation of the last witness, that martial arts expert, is likely to be what kicks off proceedings in the morning. But it was interesting seeing the two sides set out their case. The prosecution began by saying they wanted jurors to remember the numbers 929. That is the number of minutes at 9 minutes 29 seconds. That's the time that they say Derek Chauvin was on George Floyd's neck. And they started out by playing very early the full video that we saw going around the world. Many of the jurors hadn't actually seen that video, and even for people that had, it was quite a shocking reminder. The prosecutor saying you can believe your eyes, basically saying whatever the defence say, believe what you're saying here as the cause of death. The defence obviously arguing that we don't know the cause of death. As I mentioned in my report, there are several other underlying factors that they argue were at play. And they also mentioned the fact that there were other pieces of evidence. It's not just about the amount of time that the encounter took. They mentioned 50,000 pieces of evidence that have to be gone through. And they asked the jury to bear that in mind, and that their client, they say, was just following his training.
Lebu, thank you very much for the very latest there, and that's something we'll continue to follow over the course of the trial, which should take at least a few weeks.
Now, a new finger prick blood test that can detect antibodies to the coronavirus is to be used to track the impact of the vaccination programme across the UK. The Office for National Statistics will also be able to use the data gathered from around 150,000 volunteers to determine how resistant existing vaccines are against emerging strains of the virus.
It's enabling us to do things faster, it's enabling to do things at greater scale, and it's enabling us really to be able to make sure that no areas of the population are invisible. We've got estimates right across our population.
So Lenny Henry has written an open letter urging black British people to get the Covid-19 jab. It's a letter signed by celebrities like the actor David Harewood and Reverend Rose Hudson Wilkin. He acknowledges what he describes as legitimate concerns, but says it's time people trusted doctors and scientists involved in the development of the vaccine.
Don't let your concerns be the thing that widens racial inequality in our society.
Don't let coronavirus cost even more black lives. Because we matter.
We love you. We don't want you to get sick.
We don't want you to die.
So please, hear us.
And when your turn comes, take the jab.
And we'll be joined live on the programme by Sir Lenny Henry at 7:30 this morning.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Now, police in London are appealing for help in tracing a teenager who has been missing for a week. Richard Ukorogeye, who's 19, was last seen leaving his home in West London. His family say the student had been struggling to cope with university.
Container ships have started sailing through the Suez Canal again after a stranded vessel blocking it for nearly a week was finally freed. The trapped Ever Given caused long delays as hundreds of ships are waiting to pass through the canal, which links the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. Experts say the backlog will take days to clear.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.